It's Create Day, my friends, so let's get creative with some Dollar Tree frames. My first one is this square frame with the glass panes in the middle. So I remove the paper and then give it a good cleaning with rubbing alcohol. I want to do a reverse decoupage method on this, and I'm going to use the Tim Holtz Botanical Collage paper. I just can rip it right off by holding it down onto the sides of the glass. And now with my Mod Podge, this one's old, so I had to water it down a little bit. It was really thick. I'm just going to apply this on the right side of the paper because I want that facing forward. So I just spread out my Mod Podge and smooth the paper out 1/2 at a time. Then I can take my little scraper and smooth out any air bubbles. And this is how it looks once it's applied. When it's dry, I just go in with my sanding block and in a downward motion, I remove the excess paper on the edges. I want to do a floral transfer onto the front of the glass. The decoupage is on the back, and this flower that I pick out, that one right there, I am going to apply on the front of the glass. I cut out the one piece that I want, and then I can remove the backing, lay it down onto the glass, smooth it out with my fingers, and then using the little stick that comes with the transfers, I just rub over it until that entire image has transferred onto my glass. Just pull that little carrier sheet off, and there you are with your beautiful image transferred on. This flower looks stunning with the black and white, and you just burnish it on there to make sure it's on there good, and that's where I should have stopped. But no, I needed to make a bow. So I used this black, white, and silver ribbon that was silky like the hanger on the back of the frame. And I thought, oh, I'll put this little bow in the corner with a pearl on it and it'll look fabulous. And I absolutely hated it. So I took this one off and I thought I'd add a little lace one, and no, that didn't work either. So I ended up taking that one off, and there was a blemish in that corner now because I had to sand off where the glue was. So I ended up repainting it with black acrylic paint. I should have left it like it was. And now I just put my glass inserts in the frame, and that is it. That's all there is to this one. Super simple, super quick. So now this one is my favorite. This is another small square frame. And I'm taking my large craft sticks and cutting them to size so that I can make almost like little like pallet boards or fence boards on the inside of the frame. I want this one to be more rustic and kind of a, vintage feel. So I remove that backing piece and I'm going to give it a good coat of my white gesso. The gesso is mostly just for a good base coat. If some of this still shows through, that's okay because the little craft sticks will cover that up. And now with my antiquing wax, I'm going to just take a baby wipe and apply this onto all my craft sticks. I want them to have kind of a weathered wood look, so this antiquing wax works really well for that. I'm going to mix some linen paint with my white acrylic paint and do a dry brush over these to add to that weathered look. I have some wooden heart cutouts, that I got from Hobby Lobby, and I'm going to use these for the front of my little sign. So I'm just picking out on a piece of scrapbook paper the position that I want for my heart, trace around it, and then I can cut it out. I do the same thing on a different piece of paper that I think goes with the first one, and this heart is a little bit smaller, and I'm tracing around the word Paris. And now I will cut that one out, and then we can decoupage these both onto our wooden hearts. And again, I just smooth it down after I've got the Mod Podge on there. And the little rough edges will be sanded off once the glue is dry. Now for this heart, I wanted to wrap some jute twine around it, so I'm just starting with a dot of hot glue in the back and starting my twine there, and then I will just wrap this around, periodically adding dots of hot glue to keep it secure, and I will just wrap all the way around this little heart. Once that was done, it was time to burn off the fuzzies. The Mod Podge is dry, so now I'm just sanding in a downward motion on the sides of the hearts to remove the excess paper. I'm applying my craft sticks a little bit differently than usual. I'm using hot glue for this first layer, and I'm going against the edge on either side and then leaving approximately the same amount of space in between each one in the middle so that I can overlap with the other remaining sticks. And I use tacky glue for those because they are sticking to the other sticks that have that wax on them instead of on the base of the board. So I felt like they would hold better with the tacky glue. And then I just wipe off with a little brush any of the excess glue that squeezes out the sides. I really like doing it this way with the sticks overlapping. It just adds that much more dimension to it. I want to add some lace trim to the large heart, so I cut a few little snips on that inside edge that's going to be on the back of the heart so that I can easily manipulate this around that curve. And I'm applying this with hot glue, and I will need to do those snips again at the bottom where you have a sharp corner, and then again on the other side at the rounded edge of the heart. Now if you're using a ruffled ribbon, something that's been gathered, that would probably lay down a lot easier than this straight lace. So I just keep working in small sections, applying the glue and laying the lace down and trying to keep it from pulling up too tight and cupping around the front of the heart. And then at the very end, I snip off the excess, and then I add a dot of hot glue to attach those two ends together. I cut a strip of lace to apply to the center of my board, and I just did that with tacky glue. I glued down the edges first, and then I added a little bit into the middle pieces just to make sure that it was intact well enough that I could add my other embellishments to it. It's time to add my wooden heart, and I'm using tacky glue for that as well. So now I'm using some hot glue to tack down that lace trim I put on the back. Like I had said earlier, if you pull on it, it cups around the front, and that's exactly what it was doing. So I tack that down, and then I can add my second heart that is only going to be glued to the edge of the bigger heart. Then I can add my jute twine heart onto the bigger heart with some hot glue. I made this little teeny tiny pink ribbon to put onto that jute heart. So with some hot glue, I'm just going to attach that, and then I can trim the ends because I didn't know what length I was going to want, so I left them really long. So I trim those off, and then I can add one of these little pearls from this strand. I just cut it off, and then I can hot glue that in the middle of the bow. I have this piece of cardstock, and I want to use just the edge to do this stamp that just has words on it. So I picked out the words, "You are beautiful," and I wanted to try a couple of different colors. First was pink peony, and so I stamped that on there, and it did not show up well at all. So my next choice was the Timber Brown from Stays On, and I tried that one, and it turned out really well, and that's the one I ended up going with. I used my paper cutter to trim off that section of the cardstock, and then I was able to just trim that piece to the right size. Then I applied it using some tacky glue. I picked out this little flower to put on there and attached that with some hot glue, and that was it for this piece. I absolutely love the way this one turned out. Now this one's a little different. I'm going to do a shadow box out of it. So the first thing I had to do was disassemble it. I took my utility knife and carved down through the glue that was holding that back on there. It took a while. It was no easy task, I'm not gonna lie. Finally got it apart, and then I had to remove that top glass piece from the cardboard. So I tried using my heating tool and a utility knife, because I didn't know what kind of glue it was, so I thought the heating tool might help. But in the end, it was mostly a matter of me chipping away at it with my utility knife, and I finally got it to break loose and was able to remove the whole piece of glass. Then, of course, I needed to do a good coat of gesso. I'm making a mold out of the IOD cameo molds. I use some cornstarch. I put my air dry clay in there, smooth it out, scrape off the excess, and then when you pop out this mold, it's actually quite beautiful, very detailed. I love it. Now the frame I wanted to use for this did not fit exactly, so I put my mold down, and using a utility knife, I traced around the edges where I would have to trim it off so that it would fit into the frame. So I just trim off those edges, and then I can lift it up and get it on my hands and get my fingers wet and smooth those edges down. And then I can also use my little clay tool dipped in water to help smooth down the edges. Now on the inner piece of that box, I had painted those edges like a golden brownish color because I was going to use a different piece of paper. And then I decided I wanted this paper, and so I just decided to cut around the whole thing, and I would just cover up those edges that I previously painted. So I just traced around it with my pencil and then cut it out. I'm using glue stick to apply the paper to the cardboard. I smooth it out with my hands, but then I go over it with one of those sticks that come with the transfer pieces, and just to make sure everything's smooth. I want to paint my frame vintage teal, but I wanted to add some texture to it. It's a very slick frame. So I've got some baking soda on my plate, and I'm just mixing that in with my vintage teal. And I will do one coat of this texture paint, and then I will do another coat of the vintage teal without the texture and just pouncing it on, as you see me doing there. And I think I ended up doing a third coat that way too. Since my cameo didn't fit perfectly into this frame, there's a gap on the top and the bottom. I want to paint the area underneath it the same gray color that I'm painting the frame. So I go ahead and trace around the inside of that frame so I'll know where I need to apply my paint. I'm taking a deep gray and mixing it with white acrylic paint to get a kind of a medium gray color. I go ahead and paint the frame, and then I paint the outer edge of that circle that I drew in there for the frame. You don't have to, I didn't have to cover the middle section because that's covered by the cameo. Now I'm mixing the white acrylic paint with that original vintage teal so that I can dry brush a lighter version of that color onto the frame. To add to the vintage look of this frame, I'm dry brushing on some metallic paint in the color zinc. I want my cameo to be kind of a cream color, so I mix together linen and white. So now I have these little roses and a heart that I did out of the same IOD mold as I did the cameo. I did not get footage of that. And I'm going to paint these all with a color called Rosy Mauve. And then I'm using my silver metallic paint to paint the inside of the heart. I use my clear wax mixed with some deep gray paint to create a gray wax that I can go over my cameo with to create some aging. So I just brush this on, and then I use a baby wipe to take off the excess, and all that dark goodness stays down in the little crevices and just gives it a really nice vintage look. That's one of the cool things with these waxes. If you have clear wax, you can mix it with any color to create that color of a wax. Now with a really small sponge dauber and some Princess Pink paint, I am just going to lightly brush over the like raised edges of these flowers and the heart to give them some highlight. Then I applied some of the same gray wax, and this is how they turned out. Now I'm going to cut some more pearls off of this little strand, and then I can apply them to my frame. These are really tiny, so since I was using hot glue, I used some tweezers to apply them to the frame. I'm using gel medium to apply my frame to the inside of my shadow box. I'm using the gel medium as well to apply my air dry clay cameo and my rosettes. I wanted to add some lace to the bottom of this, so I cut a strip and I'm attaching it on one side, going to the middle, and then I'm going to fold it over and tack it down with hot glue. Fold it over again, tack it down, fold it over again, and then we're going to fold it back over and tack it down to the other side. So there's like this little raised bunch of lace in the middle. And then I'm going to, with hot glue, attach my little heart air dry clay piece. And now with the hot glue, I'm also going to attach my little metal key around one of the pearls on the frame. Now I have this piece that I cut out from a piece of scrapbook paper. It has the word cherish on it, and I'm going around the edges with my gray paint to distress it a little, and then I'm going to apply it to my piece with some glue stick. Now I am applying some white wax to the entire frame. It will seal the chalk paint and add a little bit more aging and subtleness to the color of this frame. And then it's time to put everything together. So I'm hot gluing in the glass panel onto the inside of the frame. Next, I'm going to use my tacky glue to go all around the inside of that frame next to the glass so that I can put the cardboard shadow box back in place. Then I work the cardboard back into place where it originally was, and I'm just going to put some weight on top of it and let it dry overnight. I decided to add some lace to the top of this. I had a piece where there was these scallops on there, so I just glue that in the middle with some hot glue, and then I go ahead and wrap it around the edges and attach it with hot glue there as well. With hot glue, I added this little flower to the center on the front, and then I attached flat backed pearls to each corner. I want this to be able to stand on its own, so I'm going to give it some like legs, I guess. I saved the pieces that I had cut from the craft sticks I used on the other project, and I'm going to glue 3 of these together, 2 sets of 3, and then I can attach them to the back of the frame. When I get them all glued together, I go ahead and put a little clip on there and let them dry overnight. I was able to attach these with hot glue and it worked really well. It stands up perfectly, but it's really straight up and down, and I decided I wanted it to lean back a little bit. So I took some of the small popsicle sticks, I glued 4 of them together, and I'm going to create like a little ledge under there so that it will lean back a little bit. I clamped those together as well and let them dry. When they were dry, I used tacky glue to apply this up underneath the frame in the area between the frame and the back of the shadow box. It's really hard to explain because there's, like, if you look at this, there, the shadow box behind is lower than the frame, and on the bottom it's higher than the frame. So everything's attached now, and I'm just using my antique wax to give this more of a rustic wood look. I'm going to paint this on all of those wood pieces and then use a baby wipe to kind of take a little bit off and just give it more of a distressed look, and then that will be it, and we are done with this piece. So that's going to do it for this video. I hope you got some inspiration and are just waiting to go out there and get yourself some Dollar Tree frames and do some creating. Thank you for all of you that have subscribed to my channel and the support that you've given me. And until next time, I hope I've inspired you to go create something. See you next time.